We don't want to be wrong. It hurts. Whether it's being corrected or taking criticism or making a mistake at work, it hurts when we come face to face with the fact that we did something wrong, that we were wrong. So to avoid these painful feelings, we make up all kinds of excuses to rationalize why we weren't wrong, why we didn't make a mistake. When people tell us that we were wrong, we start coming up with all sorts of reasons as to how actually what we said that was wrong actually isn't wrong. When someone gives us criticism, we start listing out all these reasons as to why we did it initially the way we did it, rather than just simply accepting the criticism. Or when we make a mistake and we try to blame others, we make up whole stories as to why it's actually not our fault. And this can cause all kinds of problems. We push friends away because we blame them for things they didn't actually do. Or we try to argue endlessly about why what it is that we said originally is actually true, and we can end up, pissing people off. And I think much more importantly is we don't learn. Because if we're so busy trying to not see the fact that we were wrong about something, or we made a mistake, and trying to rationalize it, trying to dismiss it with all these made-up excuses, we end up focusing entirely on the excuse and not the truth. Rather than see the fact, we lie. We lie not just to others, but to ourselves. When people give us criticism, we start making up all these excuses as to how, actually, that's just their opinion, or, everything's subjective, and their criticism can just be thrown away and dismissed. When we don't allow ourselves to see that we made a mistake, or that we were wrong, we can't then learn from those things. We can't learn from our mistakes. And as a result, we stagnate as a person. So the real question is, why do we do this? Why is it so damn hard to just say, you know what, I was wrong? The feelings we get when we feel like we're wrong is very painful. We feel embarrassed, ashamed, like we're stupid. This is really the core of why it is that we lie to ourselves. It's to avoid that pain. Because what's going on is we've linked our own self-worth to being right. When someone corrects us, we get that sinking feeling of embarrassment, of shame. That is a painful emotion. And what we do when we try to lie to ourselves or lie to other people about, actually I was right, what we're doing is we're running from that painful emotion. We run from it because it hurts. It's like pulling your hand away from a hot stovetop. It burns. So you pull away. The same thing is going on the inside. You feel those painful emotions well up. So you start trying to redirect your attention to something else, which is why when we try to run away from those internal feelings, we externalize it. We turn our attention to things outside of ourselves, which leads us to getting defensive, getting combative with people, getting into crazy, ridiculous arguments where we don't even know what we're saying anymore, because we're in this state of panic, running from this feeling inside of us, running from that internal pain. Rather than accept the fact that we were wrong and feel that painful emotion of embarrassment or shame or whatever it might be, we start arguing with people about it. We start saying, no, I was right. You don't know what you're talking about. That's not what it says on Wikipedia. We get into stupid arguments. We blame others, all to not feel that painful emotion, because when we feel that painful emotion, it feels like not simply, I did something wrong, but I am wrong. We feel like when we do something bad, it's like proof that we're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not capable enough. Or we're just bad. What it feels like is an attack on our very self-worth. This is what creates the insecurity of being wrong, which then leads us to get defensive anytime that we feel like we're wrong, anytime someone criticizes us or corrects us. When we get into this defensive mindset, it's not that we're trying to convince others that we're right. We're trying to convince ourselves that we're right. So when we're making up bullshit excuses as to why our mistake really isn't a mistake, or how someone's criticism of us is irrelevant, what we're doing is we're trying to combat a perceived attack on our self-worth. You can almost think of it as a soothing mechanism, because it's not so much about convincing other people that they were right. It's almost like convincing yourself that you're right, and thereby still worth something. So why is it that we've tied our self-worth to being right? Well, to admit that we made a mistake means to admit that we're not perfect. But what's so wrong about that? Well, it has to do with how we measure our self-worth. In our culture, there's really only two views on how we measure our self-worth. One is we accept that we have to be perfect and therefore never make a mistake, we're never wrong. We have a standard and we have to reach that standard all the time, or there's something wrong with us if we don't reach that standard. Or you can accept that we are flawed and we do make mistakes and that we're not perfect. So when it comes to the first option, the idea of having a standard that you have to reach all the time, the problem with this is no one is perfect. And when you set yourself up this impossible goal of perfection, you're really setting yourself up to hate yourself. You're never going to be perfect all the time. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be wrong. And to expect yourself to do that is setting yourself up to be disappointed in yourself. Because if you're expecting yourself to reach this impossible standard all the time, it's just not going to happen. So when you inevitably make a mistake, you're going to feel like you're not living up to the standard that you expect yourself to live up to. In other words, you're going to feel like you're not as good as what you should be. You got that fact wrong, you'll feel like an idiot. You made a mistake, you'll feel like a fool. When your self-worth is tied to being right, you'll always be afraid of making a mistake or of being wrong. So this makes the alternative sound pretty good. If you aren't perfect, then accepting that you're flawed seems like the reasonable thing to do, right? This seems like the path to security, right? Because if you're accepting that you're not perfect and you're capable of making mistakes, then to say that I accept that I'm flawed seems like you're accepting the fact that you're not perfect. But it's actually just a different way of saying the exact same thing. Some of the things this mentality creates is the attitude of, I have an abrasive personality. It's who I am, and people need to accept that. Or, I want to find someone who loves me, flaws and all. It sounds nice on the surface, but really what it's doing is it's not replacing this idea of tying your self-worth to being right. What it's doing is it's simply changing the standard by which you assess what is right. So instead of having a standard of perfection, you just throw that away, and you're left with no standard at all. The way you are is perfect. The way you are is right. So you're always right. It's not changing the link between self-worth and being right. And the result of this attitude is seeing any kind of standard as an attack, as well as defining who you are by your flaws. I'm fat and that's just who I am. Beauty is a social construct. These statements are both an attack on the idea of having some kind of standard, whether that's health or beauty. Both those statements are dismissing the idea of a standard, whether that's health or beauty. The same thing can go for any aspect of life that might have a standard tied to it. But if you'll notice, it's also tying in the rejection of a standard to their own identity. Like, I don't just happen to be fat right now. I am fat. That's part of who I am. And if I were to lose that, then somehow my identity of a person would be different. They're both defensive statements trying to combat what they perceive to be an attack on their self-worth. Because the tie between self-worth and being right hasn't changed. It's just throwing out this idea of a standard. So you're left with, you can do anything and you can be anything, and that makes you right all the time. What's ironic is this alternative is really just the exact same thing. You're right all the time because perfection is impossible and there's no standard by which to assess what it means to be right. Hey, that's just who I am, or hey, that's just my subjective opinion. In the end, they're both the same mindset. They both come from an insecurity of not wanting to be wrong, and both lead to defensiveness and endless rationalizations as to why you're right. Why both of these are so damaging to your life is because they both turn you into a defensive and insecure person. You'll be constantly on the lookout and afraid of anything that could challenge the fact that you feel right, or your sense of identity of who you are. You'll glorify your vices as if they're a critical, essential element to who you are as a person. You will never grow because you'll never learn from your mistakes, because you will never allow yourself to admit that you've made one. You'll never allow yourself to see that your current lifestyle isn't healthy for you, or that you have the option to change. You will stew in the way that you currently are forever. with either of these mindsets, you will not change. Whenever you have this kind of mindset where you tie your self-worth to being right, with either alternative ways of perceiving this, whether you hold yourself to this perfect standard or if you say, hey, there is no standards. Either way, if your self-esteem is tied to you being right, the mindset that you go into is very damaging because it gets your focus entirely on how other people perceive you, and it makes you actually antagonistic of and afraid of the facts. Rather than being interested in learning more about the world or learning more about other people or about yourself, you're going to be constantly working to ensure that everyone around you thinks that you, the way you currently are, is just right. That what you said is right, about how you behave, it's just right. And the fact that you've chosen what you've chosen in your life, it's just right. And hey, if you happen to change your mind, that's exactly what you should be doing just then. There's no alternatives, there's no other way to think, it's just what you're doing is exactly the way you should be doing it, because you are just right. Rather than being interested in learning more about the world, you're going to be focused entirely on trying to make sure everyone around you believes that you are just right the way you are. Your taste in music isn't going to change because you're not going to dive into other musical genres because what you like is part of who you are. That's not going to change. Your whole mindset is going to be on proving to yourself that you do not need to change. Either way, your focus is going to be on rationalizing that you are perfect. Trying to be perfect is just going to lead to self-hatred. And demanding that other people accept your flaws and accept you just as the way you are is just a defense from that very same self-hatred. Both of these are false alternatives. Neither way is going to help you learn how to deal with making mistakes or with failure, with being wrong in a healthy, growth-oriented way. Both leave you with crippling insecurity, and both leave you disconnected with yourself. There's a really helpful parallel that I use for myself to be really clear on this subject, and it's Gordon Ramsay's kitchen nightmares.
Seriously?
The main problem isn't just that, the food is gross or the kitchen is dirty. The main problem is that the people working there, typically the owners, refuse to see the problem. They're surprised when they see that the kitchen is dirty or that the food in the fridge is rotting. They're surprised to hear that their food is bland or undercooked or microwaved, and that's disgusting.
You can't walk around oblivious to the fact that you think this is good.
Yeah, but it's not bad in everybody's opinion.
Everything is shit to you, but we had diners eating all lunch, full dining room, but nothing's sent back.
Do you honestly think, just because they don't send it back, that your food is fucking amazing?
Their restaurant is failing, and they're surprised that there's a problem. In the kitchen, it's the same thing. They go into the fridge and they see rotting food or cross-contaminated food, and everyone's always surprised. Oh my God, how'd that happen? Couldn't have been me. Must have been somebody else. Or that was here before I got here. Or, oh, that's how the owner wants it. It's not my fault.
When was the last time this was cleaned?
The kitchen? Well, we try to do it on a daily basis.
On the surface, everything looks nice and nice. When you start digging, just can't believe it.
What the fuck is that?
What is that? Would we really serve that?
No, but doesn't this fall under the chef's job?
And what always ensues after that is the lying. The chef lies about microwaving the food. The owner lies about knowing what was in the fridge.
I'm an 86er. Don't say anything to the chefs, just let them be calm. It's okay.
They start arguing with Gordon about, oh no, I didn't know this and I didn't know that, or that's not my fault, this isn't my fault, or no, the food is actually great, people love our food.
He's completely full of shit. Like seriously, our meatloaf is like what put us on the map.
Are you aware that the lobsters in your fridge are Canadian?
Same waters, North Atlantic waters.
Maine is a Canadian lobster for you.
Martis americanus, same animal, right?
It's not so much that they're lying to Gordon as it is that they're lying to themselves. It's that same phenomenon. There's been a mistake, they've done something wrong. It's led to some kind of failure. But instead of looking at that failure, they instead lie to themselves. They lie to other people. They continue with this whole charade, trying to convince themselves that no, actually, they've been right the whole time. No, actually, it's not their fault. It's not their problem. It's not their mistake. They're doing things right. There's something wrong with someone else. It's either the customers, or it's the, one of the other employees, or it's Gordon for pointing it out. It's always something or someone else's fault, not theirs. They do not want to be wrong. And the reason why is because they feel like it means that they are no good. They feel like it diminishes them as a person, their worth as a person.
So what do I do? Like, just get out of the restaurant business? Then obviously my 33 years in the business is, like, worthless, and I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing.
This is also a great physical parallel to what we do to ourselves on the inside. Our inner self has rotting food in it, and we just say, oh, I don't know how that got there. Or, oh no, it's fine, people love it. When we're an asshole to someone, we say, oh, well, he had it coming. Or, oh, I just have an abrasive personality. Or when we get dumped, we say, oh, well, she was a bitch. Or, plenty more fish in the sea, it's fine. When we didn't get the job that we wanted, we say, oh, well, I didn't want it anyway. We lie to ourselves to escape that pain. We turn our eyes away from the thing that actually caused these problems because it's painful to see it. It's painful to see that we made a mistake. It's painful to see that we were the cause of something that hurt us. And we rationalize and we get defensive and we lie to ourselves in order to not see that fact. No, we have nothing to learn. We don't need to change anything. We're perfect. So the real question is, what should we be doing instead? Well, we have two elements that are leading us to feel insecure about ourselves: our inability to deal with negatives about ourselves and our sense of self-worth. Let's dive into negatives first. We've seen that rationalizing negatives about ourselves is only going to lead you to being insecure about yourself and closing you off from the world. The alternative is what I call the growth mindset. To refer back to Gordon, there's something he says in his show a lot that I think really captures this mindset. And it's basically along the lines of learning how to value negative input. He says, I don't care about the positives. There's nothing I can learn from them. I only care about the negatives. The idea being, when you get food sent back to the kitchen or when someone complains, that's information for you to learn how to grow, how to be better. When someone just goes, tasty, there's not really anything for you to learn there. There's not any way to grow or develop or change. How this relates to life more broadly is kind of the same principle. When you get negative input, when people tell you, hey, I really didn't appreciate the way you treated me the other day, or when you yourself are not happy in your own life, whatever this negative input might be, that's really vital information about how you're living, about how you're navigating the world. It's vital information for you to take and to analyze and to think about. How can I change in order to alleviate this problem? When you make a mistake, that's an opportunity for you to learn and grow. So what about our self-worth? Well, let's move on to that. Well, we know we can't tie it to being right because that's going to lead us to those insecurities that we talked about earlier. And it's going to also be very antagonistic to this idea of growth. You're not going to learn, you're not going to grow, you're not going to become a better person. But we have to tie it to something because it can't just be floating. You can't just think, I'm great, I have self-worth. Not for any reason, but just I do. That doesn't make sense. It has to be tied to something. To really gain security in who you are, to really be able to face the negatives about yourself, tie your self-worth to your ability to recognize and overcome the mistakes you make. See, it's not about having already overcome them. It's not like you get self-worth once you do overcome them, because that's the exact same thing about the idea of perfection. It should be tied to your ability to see the problem, as well as your ability to work to overcome them. It's not the result. It's your ability to see it and your desire to do something about it. Instead of turning away from the flaws inside of yourself, recognize your ability to face those flaws. No matter how painful they're going to be, no matter how bad you're going to feel about yourself, recognize your ability to face those facts. Your worth isn't tied to not having the problem, but tied to your ability to face those problems and to do something about it. I call this honesty. Not honesty in the sense of never telling a lie. Honesty is about giving yourself the respect you deserve by never lying to yourself about these things. Being honest is about not rationalizing why your friends don't want to spend time with you, or why you can't get a date, or why you can't get a job. It's about facing the truth inside of yourself and outside, no matter how hard it is. It's this kind of honesty that leads to security in yourself, because you know that the only way you're going to be able to deal with life, to deal with yourself, to deal with the problems in the world, is if you face them. When you make a mistake, the thing to do is to see it, to recognize it, to accept responsibility for it, and to ask yourself, what can I do better in the future? The next time you feel that inner discomfort, that inner pressure, that fear, take this moment and tell yourself that the real achievement here is not standing your ground against what you perceive to be a threat to your self-worth. It's not about rationalizing why you were right. It's not about convincing other people that you were right. The achievement is to look at the facts, no matter how hard they are, and accept them. If you've made a mistake, you've made a mistake. The best thing to do is to see it and to accept it. Realizing that the way you treat people is actually driving them away is in itself an achievement. Realizing that you can't get a date because of the way you make yourself look or the attitude you bring to the date is the first step to actually doing something about it and working toward getting something that you want, which is a successful date, a successful relationship. Honesty is about being able to look inside of yourself and accept those hard truths, no matter how painful they are. With a growth mindset and honesty working together, you'll be more secure in yourself and your ability to handle these hard truths. You'll be secure in the fact that you're able to look at your problems, your mistakes, and your flaws, and deal with them, because you'll see the causal connection between dealing with your problems and growing as a person. Honesty and the growth mindset are really big ideas, and it can be hard to see how you can fit it into your life exactly. This is why Jonathan and I wrote a guide to gain more confidence in your life. Not just confidence to go, ask a girl out or something like that, but a deeper kind of confidence, a confidence to really start going after your life and what you want. I really suggest you check out our guide on how you can gain more confidence in your life. It's 5 comprehensive tips on how you can start making subtle changes to your life, to start gaining more self-confidence, a kind of deeper confidence, to start living your life and taking it more seriously and getting more out of it. If you're interested in hearing more about this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.